one thing that keeps them accountable. But at some point, as they say, people will be like, I have other things to do, as Nadia says. I need to go sell my tomatoes. I can't be every day on a space for 8 hours, right? That is my job. So walk me through this question of what part of engagement should we be talking about and accountability, and how does that look like so that we keep this process alive to make sure that we all don't lose our time and also don't get fatigued with the process?
I think one thing we need to appreciate, there was Goldenberg some time back. Let me start there. A report was prepared. People had a lot of discussions. We saw a lot of parading of people. Then that dwindled. We saw Anglo-Rising came. People ate public money. They could not be held accountable. Then that disappeared. People like, there was a Ndongo report on land justice. Nothing came out of it. The Commission on Justice and Reconciliation, there was a report about that. Nothing ever done about it. Until people are now tired. And what we are saying is, we want to see full implementation. And because we know some of these people cannot be able to do that for the obvious reasons that they don't believe in the Constitution itself. And it's very unfortunate, even the church took a position of fighting the Constitution, a very dangerous route in 2010. We need to, those who cannot do their job, they step aside and they allow those who can do the job to take over and steer this country in full implementation of our Constitution. Because some of these things, I don't need to remind the president that every child needs education. When the government was being formed in 1963, there were three things: poverty, diseases, and ignorance. Our education system still affordable, and the people are able to go to school? No. Do our hospitals still providing medicines? You find 8 counties are lacking medicine for BCG, for tuberculosis vaccination to children. We are exposing them, and someone has money where he can walk into a fundraiser and give the same money to the church. I always wonder what this project in the church that never end, and we attend the same churches. And so you go to that issue, the issue of poverty, ignorance, and the one is, I don't know. The education, we have ignorance, we have diseases, and we have poverty. How many Kenyans are living below $1 a day income? Most Kenyans are, that's why they are online. That's why you find them on login the whole day, because what else will I be doing? Moving around. Myself, before I got an internship as an advocate, I remember I dropped 36 CVs in the city of Nairobi. And all the advocates will tell you, we'll pick you, but we can't be able to sustain you. Advocates are struggling. Doctors, we saw them, they are struggling. Those careers that all parents wished their children to become, you can imagine they are struggling. So what happens to the other Kenyan? It shows you that we need to get serious. We have talked about progressive realization of the socioeconomic rights. Have we seen the government put in place steps that are geared towards realizing this? Deliberate steps. So that we don't just talk about progressive realization. Progressive realization has a cutout that, are you putting up measures? We talked about two-third gender role. Up to date, they have not done anything. Justice Maraga reminded us before he left the office about that issue. No one has taken action about it. So what we need is not dialogue, it is action. I think that is what the leadership need to know, that we have talked too much. We need to see, I don't need to remind the member of parliament that I am telling you I don't want an extra tax. I want you to be accountable about that. I don't remind the member of parliament that I am paying you a salary of almost $1 million shillings, then I pay you allowance to attend your plenary. Who pays us to attend plenary? And you have a salary. Who pays you to attend a committee of the job you are employed to do by the people? What makes them so scared that once they get elected, they need 10 bodyguards? What are they doing wrong? They know it. And that's what we want them to address.
Okay. Nadia, you raised an important question the last time about the role of creative, and and we've seen what the creatives have been able to do for this movement in this time, using your own talents to push the conversation forward, musicians, comedians, and the rest. But also, there was a question about the corporate world that would stop you doing these things before. There was a reason for that, because the corporate world and the government work, hand by hand. What happens when that comes back? When you're told by the person who's gives you the contract that I continue seeing you doing this Gen Z thing, I can't keep on supporting. What happens?
For me, I'd say any sane person that has seen how this revolution started. I remember the first thing was hisi time boy kupost. For instance, I work with StanChat right now. And I really appreciate them because we didn't have to tell them. They saw and they were like, you guys, you can do whatever you want to do. You understand? So for me, it's about if you're a sane person, you can see that the pressure and the force is something that you cannot run away from. It will catch up with you. So I think we've had, corporates that have been really understanding and supportive, and we haven't been blacklisted yet. We haven't been sent that you're out of work email. So they have understood. And today, I just want to talk about the power of social media as well. Huwa wanasema msanii ni kioo cha jamii. Every time. Personally, when I started doing music, I was in Maseno University, and during the holidays, we'd go to Kenya National Theatre. And we had something, Najwa, if there's any creative here, they know PAL, Poetry After Lunch. And what most people don't know, I started out as a poet. And I'd go there, if I do a small, maybe small poetry, I'd have other guys just listening to them. And what these people would talk about is the social injustices. It meant that the time wasn't then. It's a process, it's a journey. We had begun that journey of going to Poetry After Lunch. You're listening to people talk their truths. Talk about mimi nimetoka Kibera, these are the problems that I have seen. But now it has come a place whereby now we can retaliate that on social media. I can tweet and say, guys, MCSK needs to be held accountable. We can say Prisk was given the license to collect on behalf of the other CMOs. Public participation, has it happened? We are the artists, we are the ones who are paying for these people. And that is another conversation that has been held for so long, ever since artists before me found a problem there. I have found a problem there. And I am not going to leave, because at the end of the day, there's a time going to reach I'm not able to dance on stage as I am dancing right now. So it is, as I said before, it's accountable governance. We have to hold each and every person accountable. Kila mtu. Now, to the ladies, maybe when you are wamechaguliwa, ama they have been given a position, wasiende wakatuaibisha. We've seen the likes of Karen Nyamu, more of a socialite rather than a leader. There are so many deserving women. I am sorry to say that. It's a stray bullet, but it's the truth. There are so many deserving women who are intellectual, who are smart. We don't need to know your personal life. What have you done for the girl child? For the longest time, women have fought. You're given a position, and all we can talk about is your personal life. She really needs to check herself. Yes.
All right. Thanks. Maria, if anyone engages with politics, and we look at this in this sense, that it would be foolhardy for anyone to think that the political class is going to walk away from this and surrender and say, okay, you guys have won, fantastic, we're out. Okay? That is not going to happen. They're going to rely on what they do best, which is politics. And I suspect this is what's going to happen in the next 2-3 years. From where you sit, with all these issues that we need to solve, and there are many, right? And they're serious. Parliament and constitutional, two-third gender rule not anywhere being affected. There are many things on the priority of this list we just don't know and don't have. Give us some advice. How should we look at these questions that we exercise our minds and say we should have priorities, bare minimums, and go forward? Because the political class will have that. And this is a long battle, as Reverend Goya has told us.
Yeah, so I think the first thing, we need to appreciate that the country has changed. It's not business as usual. So there's been a shift in the minds of Kenyans. Whether they're saying it or not, whether they're organizing or not, it's present. And we have to seize the moment. So where do our leaders come from? They come from within us. Today we'll sit here and say, hey, James unatosha mboga. Where tutakuchagua? But what happens? What happens? What follows after? Hey, Mhesh. What do we say? Toboka. Kakitu kalanch. Mhesh. That's the problem. Our politics, our governance is transactional. And the minute I give you a 50 bob, a 100 bob, a 200 bob, I'm done with you until next time. So this shift has to be literal. Like, we can't just talk about it. We have to live it. We have to talk it. We have to walk it. The fact of the matter is, politicians are smart. Even the ones we say are uneducated are street smart. So they will just look at what is trending and jump on it. And if we've decided that going forward, we're serious about our governance, we're serious about who gets into office, how the hell does somebody get elected while they're in jail? How do you get elected after shooting somebody dead? And DCI put out a notice that they're looking for you, and you get elected. So what Nadia, what Mike Mushiri, what other artists and individuals and human rights activists have been doing needs to be amplified. Take civic education very literally, because there are people who think that there's an MP, I think he's called Kamala, in Western. He was telling his people that sasa mjue tunamaliza maneno ya CDF, sasa msikuje kwangu kuniomba. Because that's the way things are done. You come, you ask me for 300 bob, sawa, sawa. And he'll not perform. He will not build that road. I mean, nothing will get done. So we need to amplify the voice of civic education. I think that's very important. People need to understand why electing an MCA is very important, because that's a person who's closest to you in terms of resources that have been devolved to the county. Why a political party is not more superior to an individual who's representing you at the ground. It's important for us, and I think you've debunked this, that tribalism is no longer a factor. And as long as it remains a non-factor, we are ahead. So mtu wetu, that politics is gone. So if we keep at it, and if we keep agitating for the very things that we're actually talking about, governance, accountability, transparency, right from the elective positions. And I think this is an opportunity for young people. You can get elected without being on a party. Yeah, but remember, if our institutions, and this is a very critical point for me, James, if our institutions are not safeguarded, today our institutions are failing us because they are at the mercy of the executive. Why? Because the executive pays. They're the ones who provide a budget. So everybody who's in a position of leadership, a position of governance, a position of representation is swallowed by the system. And we've talked about the system. When you get there, you're given, the first thing you're given as a chairman is an allowance, sitting allowance. The next thing, mkubwa unataka gari gani? And that thing gets to your head and you forget why you got there in the first place. So let's fight for our institutions. Let's get our institutions back. Let's make sure anybody who's nominated to serve on those institutions is a credible person, and they can always pass the suitability test that is Chapter 6. Remember, in Kenya, we don't have an absence of laws. Steve Wanjiru talked about the conflict of interest bill that is currently in Senate. That bill, it's not that we don't have laws that could have jailed people for conflict of interest. Right. What we've had is deliberate missteps in the application of the law. So the unification of these laws is important. And that's why when you said that, what will we do going forward? Because people will get tired and they'll go back to doing what they need to do. Let us just hold people to account. Start by recalling. And I like that process that people are actually taking now. And let's keep whoever is in office accountable. Let's keep them on their toes. Let's get involved in the budget making process. Do we know when the cycle starts? Because it's about to start again in September.
Right.
So that eternal vigilance. It's a lot to ask for the citizenry, but I think it's a price we are ready to pay, and it's been obvious from the reasons.
I want to get one comment from Sylvia, who's been waiting for like an hour. Sylvia, if you can have your minutes now, what is the thing that you want us to do next? Do we have Sylvia?
Yes, good afternoon.
Go ahead.
I'm speaking as a lay person that according to how things are right now, we understand that a government is formed by three arms. I think we have three arms of the government. But as things are now, it's like the parliament and the executive have merged. So we do not have oversight. The legislature, people like the MPs are supposed to represent the people who voted them to go there and do the legislation. But even if they do the legislation, is it favoring a common citizen? Everything they are doing is about them. So I was asking, I'm speaking as a lay person, so just pardon me, and if at all I'm wrong, just try to enlighten me more. As a lay person, under Article 1 of the Constitution, can I say clause number 2, which says that people can exercise their right, is it their right, directly, or can I say the leadership or something? Like we can exercise our power directly. Now, how do we do it legally? Because right now, the parliament is there, but it's like we are the ones who are doing the job. We are here on the streets. We are the ones providing oversight. We are the ones pushing for better legislation. So how do we go about it? Because all this mess is because whoever we put in power messed us up. This also has come about because of the micromanaging, the executive micromanaging the other two, trying to micromanage the other two arms of the government. How do we get ourselves into this?
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think just an important question, and maybe I'll start with you, Mary, then we'll go to Goi. This idea that you elect people to get to office and they decide that we know best, all right? In fact, you become very clever all of a sudden, and I know what you want. And I think we saw that on this finance bill, that MPs literally told everyone that you guys have no point whatsoever. We know best and we'll do what we want. How do we stop that from ever happening again? That a person who gets elected becomes truly a servant, not our lords?
I think it just goes back to the same thing of public participation, because what happens is that we have to accept that once we elect a leader, we are expecting that they will go and deliver on the mandate. So the issue of, did we elect a party or an individual? Because usually they wave. You're told, this one got in kwa sababu ya wave. And the people were with the wave. So that's why some of the MPs had the temerity to tell us, it's not you, it's the party. It's not you I'm accountable to, it's the party. So the first thing is, because you cannot recall an MP until they've been in office for 2 years, is just to keep a record of it, I guess. Because now, constitutionally, you cannot recall before a certain period. But the fact of the matter is that the way we have seen participation being carried out with creation of ChatGPT, breaking down the information. That's the first thing, breaking down the information, ensuring it reaches people. Petitions are online. It's easier now to find people, to bring people together. Before you had to be, moneyed to do these things. Right. So it's much easier now.
Okay. Reverend Koi, how do we make our politicians actually work for us? How do we stop the arrogance, the kiburi that they have, that because I'm in office now, I do whatever I want?
The message has already been sent.
Yeah.
The message has already been sent. And what I'm very happy to see is now legislators now being very penitent about what they're doing. That's one. But then the second one is just adding what she has just said in itself. There are ways we can just keep our legislators accountable. One is just, there's a roll call in Parliament. So when you go in Parliament, you have to, sign in. And so we need to be able to see, just the way when we're in school, you sign a roll in itself. Were you present? And that information is available to any person in the public. We know one legislator now who has barely been in Parliament for 1.5 years or so, that is now out in the public space. And then thirdly, it's being able to get access to your member of Parliament and demanding access to your member of Parliament as often as you can. Like you have a constituency office. How often is this member of Parliament in their office? And so that is another place where you can go and demand to be able to see them. What are your office hours at the constituency office? That is where you can meet them at their local office. And if you are a big office, the government has given this MP or legislator the resources to cover the entire, like North Hall. That's a huge constituency. But there are different constituency sections where you can meet your legislator. So those are some of the things that come to mind.
Yeah. Steve.
Yes, I think, sorry. I was thinking, as I was talking, I was thinking about how we gauge our MPs' performances. And we diverted it to the duties and the responsibilities that are with the ministers, cabinet. Those are the parameters most of the time we gauge when we are voting for a member of parliament. Amejenga barabara ngapi? Ameweka mashule ngapi? Is that the job of a legislature? No. Because that has been the parameter for voting. So I think even as we move forward in this conversation, and as I address your concern, we need to do an inward reflection as a people and ask ourselves, are we expecting the wrong things from the right people? Are we voting you as a member of parliament? Then we expect you to build roads for us. Then we have a cabinet which has a ministry of road and a budget to do roads. So that is where we spend our money, wastage, and it becomes a point of a lot of wastages and privileges. And I think my feeling and my contribution to this conversation of the young people, and I want the whole Kenyans to embrace this, not as a Gen Z affair, but the spirit of the youth. Why the spirit of the youth? I want to say this quoting Henry Ford. There's something he said that the greatest thing you can do to yourself is to keep your mind young. Why do you need to keep your mind young? Because at your formative age is when you have a vision, is when you have ambitions. So once you become old and you allow the aged you to be complacent, you lose the vision. We got our constitution in 2010 with a lot of ambition. That was our youth at that time. We got our independence with a lot of ambition. Then what did we do? We became complacent. That's where these guys, when you visit them, they give you a handout. Before you even negotiate, you live with a bahasha. You see a priest has gone to State House, they're living with a brown bahasha. And you saw them walking in, they didn't have one. So I don't know, there's a Bible inside there. You create an office of intercessors, as in your prayer request. These are crazy things that we have been witnessing as a country. And it's high time we start holding our leaders accountable. Even the judiciary itself. The last time there was we find, with all due respect to the courts, we filed a petition challenging the deployment of the military. And I don't need to go to the details, but we all saw the live stream of that particular ruling. We all read the Constitution. I don't need to remind anyone the clause in the Constitution. And we can question the integrity of such a person when they are holding a public office. So we need to hold these people accountable. We need to have the right people doing the right job and not putting the wrong people. That's why I keep on saying, until and unless we push for the removal of CDF from the hands of parliamentarians, We are going to continue electing people because they are giving us money. That's why they buy the ticket, because I buy it. I have friends who contribute, give me campaign money. Why is it costing almost 50 million to join parliament? If I save the whole salary for parliament from day one to the last day, I can't raise 50 million. Even if you work with the simplest mathematics, because they have a lifestyle to maintain. So there's a lot of inward reflection that is needed, both to the people, to the president, to the leadership, at all levels and at all arms, and we need to hold them serious accountable.
All right, thank you very much, Reverend Goi Odera, nashukuru sana, Steve Bugwa, and Maria Menekap. You've all done very well. Thank you for the panel. I leave Nadia to perform as we exit the stage. Thank you very much. You've all been very nice and very kind.
Wow. Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure.
Ngoja.
Thank you very much.
Ningewaomba tusimame. Let us stand up, please. You know, when I came here, I didn't come today to perform, by the way. I didn't come as a Kenyan artist, a celebrity. I came here as a concerned Kenyan. And first off, I want to send my condolences to the families of the bereaved soldiers who we were together kwa barabara, kwa streets as we were fighting. So my biggest condolences to the family and to anyone here who's been affected by this time. As Boniface has said, yeah, they've partnered with Kenya councillors. What is it called again? I think I've forgotten the name. So you can see them after this. And for me, it's also to say, we've had a win, yes. We've had some wins. But at the same time, we need justice for the people, to the families zenye wameachwa na wapendwa wao. They need closure. Ama namna gani? Tuweke ngoma imechangamka kidogo. Weka maombi. Kazi ya Mungu haina makosa. Ingekuwa binadamu wanatoa ningekosa. Sio jujuni, si keleleni. Turudie tena. Ngoja. Kazi ya Mungu haina makosa. Ingekuwa binadamu wanatoa ningekosa. Sio jujuni, si keleleni. Tene kazi di. Hoya, hoya, hoya. Hoya. Hoya, hoya.
Vicky Fundes.
Nilichopata nikiomba walisema kitakwisha. Nikitoa shukurani hadharani wakasema najamba. Hao binadamu walilipa wiki. Sasa imepita miaka bado wanasubiri. Kazi ya Mungu haina makosa. Tuone wote. Ingekuwa binadamu wanatoa ningekosa. Hey. Sio chuchu ni maombi. Ni maombi. Si kelele ni maombi. Ni maombi. Sio chuchu ni maombi. Ni maombi. Si kelele ni maombi. Ni maombi. Hoya, hoya, hoya. Hoya, hoya, hoya. Hoya, hoya, hoya. Ati. Na mikono nitainua, magoti nipige, niweleze jinsi alivyotenda katika maisha yangu. Kazi ya Mungu haina makosa. Ingekuwa binadamu wanatoa ningekosa. Kazi ya Mungu kweli haina makosa. Ingekuwa binadamu wanatoa ningekosa. Sio chuchu ni maombi. Asanteni sana. Ni maombi. Si kelele ni maombi. Ni maombi. Sio chuchu ni maombi. Ni maombi. Si kelele ni maombi. Ni maombi. Asante sana, asante, asante, asante. Ila Mungu hawezi kubali uanguke. Alichoanzisha leo lazima atakamilisha. Kazi ya Mungu haina makosa.
ingekuwa binadamu wanatoa ningekosa kazi yangu.
Tushaskia Wada please Tushaskia tukiingia ni kubla huko ngabado unachukiwa madam so anguka nao itabaki meflow na vibe anguka nao koko single for now taki mteja patika
DJ Tushaskia Wada please Tushaskia Tushaskia tukiingia ni kublast huko ngabado unachukuliwa madam so anguka nao itabaki umeflow na vibe anguka nao koko single for now mdagi mteja patikani hadi late night saa 6 ndo taniwai nikupin location na nikofana na hii anguka nayo anguka nayo twende down low now standa juu ya fit mikono juu alafu click tuliza pesa alafu one leg anguka nayo one leg check it anguka nayo anguka nayo anguka nayo anguka nayo anguka nayo kama uko na new catch anguka nayo kona new catch anguka nayo kona patina magwash anguka nayo round kwa now mdagi mteja patikani kadi late night saa 6 ndo taniwai ati anguka nayo ati anguka nayo na katika msupa webajuka cheza chini kikonezo maduda anguka nayo zinazoitisha anguka ndani matisho za wadaglis babe ama dali sambu serikali juni serikali tamka asali unajua ni nani flow shati ki ndo nimeduka hapo dauni chi kutekewa kwa daily miti mana zi mana zogo anguka nayo ati anguka nayo anguka nayo anguka nayo anguka nayo anguka nayo anguka nayo kama relax anguka nayo kona patina magwasha anguka nayo koko single for now anguka nayo ati anguka nayo nayo anguka nayo anguka nayo anguka nayo ati anguka nayo anguka nayo anguka nayo kama uko na new catch anguka nayo kona patina magwash anguka nayo round 2 kwa iba anguka nayo anguka nayo check anguka nayo anguka nayo ati anguka nayo anguka nayo check DJ anguka nayo hey anguka nayo.
A round of applause for the guys Anguka nayo. Thank you so much for your patience. We get into another session, a round of discussions as well. I'd like you to help me welcome my set of panelists on stage. The first person that we have is Otsiemo Nyamoya from the Human Rights Watch. Please, a round of applause for him as he makes his way up. Thank you so much. You can have a seat. And then we have Dr. Njoki Wamae. She is an assistant professor of politics and international studies from the USIU Africa. Please, a round of applause for her. Kwani tumechoka kupiga makelele? Tumechoka? Tumechoka? And then the next panelist is Cyprian Nyamwamu. He is from the Kenya Bora. Thank you so much. And then we have Boniface Mwangi, the human rights activist. We all know him. Please. I am Linus Moshigadi. I will be facilitating this round of discussions. Please, karibu sana.
Linus.
So I want us to begin from where we've come from in terms of activism in Kenya and what brought us to where we are here today. So I will begin from you, Boniface Mwangi. You have been an activist. What has been the changes, the journey, and what has been the difference with this set of protests that we've had in Kenya?
The journey began in 1922 when a lady called Nyanjiro stood up on what is called known as Harithuku Road, and she told the men who are there, if you're not going to challenge these police officers, give me your trousers. And from challenging that was the first recorded protest in this country. And that particular day, I think over 100 people died, but the British never recorded how many people died. And Nyanjiro was killed on that particular day. And fast forward to today is that there's been a passing of the baton over the years to a level where Cyprian used to organize via phones and in person, to where we are now organizing online, where people show up and say, you know what, online has become our public square, but now the public square is going offline. So you go online and say this is the issue, and you go offline. But I think the game changer is most of the young kids in this country are very angry about the state of the nation, and then they are fearless because they have nothing to lose. They are hungry, they are angry, they are unemployed. I was talking to some young people from the gate, and they're telling me, we're so broke we can't even date. You can't even have a girlfriend. You can't even make someone, you can't even think of starting a family, because how are you going to feed that mouth? So when the president decided to bring the finance bill, and it's going to even tax those who don't even have jobs, they're unemployed, with this, it's called shift, this thing that is there, the anger just exploded. So where are we at? We are very hopeful as a country. Kenya has changed forever. Let no one lie to it, hasn't changed. That's where we are at. Kenya landscape has changed, and people have reclaimed back their sovereign power. We're in charge right now. And it's like you're trying to push out a baby. It's a very critical stage, because if you make a mistake, the baby might die and kill the baby, and the mother or one of them survives. So you must midwife this process very, very carefully, that is not carjacked. The last few days, you've seen the old fossils, these very old politicians, trying to steal the struggle from the people. They're trying to own that space. And there's a possibility the next 2 days, Saturday is a Harambee Day and Burial Day. So tomorrow they're going to be all over with one agenda to center Raila Odinga in this conversation. And we refuse.
That's a very good point, and I would go back to it. Let's hear from Cyprian. From your own perspective, what has the journey been for you in terms of the activism we've seen in Kenya?
Well, the journey has been real. It has been tough. We've lost people. I thank God that I'm alive. When we went to committee, we saw the cells where a lot of our comrades in the 1980s died in prisons, including Naivasha, Kamiti, Shimo La Tewa, and all those jails and prisons. The torture chambers that used to be physical at Nyayo and Nyati House are now happening, and our young people are being thrown into swamps. But I don't want to talk about myself today. I want to answer only one question that you've asked. What is different between the struggles that we have been in and this one? Because I think that's something that has been missed in all the conversations I've listened to. And my answer is this. This is the only generation which has refused to be used. The only generation which has refused to be used. And I want to use that to bring the struggles. The Mau Mau, Modoni Nyanjiro was the mother of the Mau Mau. If you look at it, the Mau Mau were used. They died, they were deprived of land, they were kept in cells and in jails. Dedan Kimathi died, but they were used by the home guards, the Kenyatta, the Jomo Kenyattas and the home guards who took over power. Then the second liberation, which we died for, we went to jail for, to bring back Section 2A. We were again used. The people who took over power were not the people who were in the fight. Then comes the Kenya Constitution 2010, which the likes of Osieno and myself and all of us in Jokia invested our lives in. Who is the beneficiary of the Constitution of Kenya 2010? William Ruto. The one who said no is the one who is the president. Uhuru Kenyatta, who was against the Constitution, and Rigathi Gachagua are the people who are the beneficiaries of the Constitution. Again, we were used. This is the only generation since Kenya was established as a colony. Kenya became independent. We only have one generation which has refused to say, which has said, you are not going to use us. Raila every time uses dead young people in the streets to negotiate handshakes. 2007, the numbers who died 1,000, by the way, the number was more than 7,600, but we used the number that the government gave us. Then we went into handshake. Comes 2017, hundreds are killed. Power is shared. Then we come to 2022. Last year you saw 75 died. They were used to form NADCO. The young people are saying there is not going to be another dialogue where you are going to use our deaths to gain power. So I have to give it to these Gen Zs, I have to give it to them, that they have stopped something tragic, treacherous that has been going on about Kenya, and this generation has said no more using our blood, our sweat, and our tears to negotiate power.
Thank you so much, Cyprian. Dr. Njoki, rallying on the conversation here, the journey, what is your perspective?
Just something, and thank you, I'm glad we are talking about the journey, because the last 3 weeks, if you even try and get into any of these spaces, it's impossible. You don't have 100,000 followers to speak. So I'm happy we are here acknowledging also the journey. So, and we can look at it in three phases. Of course, before independence, Mau Mau and all the rest, like Muthoni Nyanjiro from 1922. Mau Mau is our DNA. Resistance is our DNA, right? Don't ever forget that. For us Kenyans, only two countries resisted the British or the French violently before 1970. Later we had the Portuguese resisting. But before 1970, there were only two countries, and one was Kenya, and the other one is which one? You know, I'm a teacher. Yes. Algeria. Yes. The liberation front in Algeria. In Africa is only those two countries. So, and it's because of the Mau Mau, and you know the guerrilla warfare that they fought. So resistance is our DNA. And with that, of course, even post-independence, people resisted the fascist state that Kenyatta, because many times we are just looking at this Ruto. We are forgetting the mistake started from Jomo Kenyatta, because he instituted a fascist state. You know the many deaths that are still unresolved. And this politics of let's forget and move on is what got us where we are, a country where impunity is our DNA now. Right? And so we need to look at that past from Kenyatta, the mistakes he made, and especially in setting up the structures of Kenya. Look at Tanzania with all its problems. Tanzania is doing much, much better in terms of politics. Kenya, we keep bragging about our economy. So what? The economy, if you don't have your rights those chapter 4, the Bill of Rights, not just the what do you call it, social and political rights, but also the economic rights. But the social and political rights are the foundation that offer you the space to demand for the others. And the social and political rights, which are enshrined in chapter 4, they should be protected. We already have them. And that's why we are saying, for me, I'm saying, let's not get excited with his changing ministers, because they'll still come back. We should be looking at chapter 4 and chapter 6. Chapter 4, our rights. Our people have been killed. Young people have been killed. These universities where I also teach, they are quiet. You know, so till we have justice, till we have the killer cops arrested, till Koome is gone, you know, and those are some of the things we are saying must change. Then we can deal with, as we deal with the rest of everything. But having said that, it's a good moment. I think Gen Z is probably now what we can call the third liberation. I think we've now entered the third liberation. And the second liberation, and I'm glad we are here in this hall. Those of us who don't know, this hall is a very important hall, Ufungamano. And Cyprian is here. I've seen many other comrades who are there those days during the IPPG reforms and NCC especially, and the National Convention on
National Convention Assembly Executive
Exactly.
Council.
That's where the Constitution of Kenya was changed, and Section 2A was repealed, and that's where we can tell off Zakayo and anybody else about why, because we fought for that constitution. And it's really sad that we have to keep fighting. That's why we need to have the right people in power, so that we are not fighting, so that it's people who also think like us, people who know human rights is part of state making. And I'm very glad, because that second liberation, first liberation was the Mau Mau and what they did, and the people who liberated Kenya. Remember, you need to also know who liberated Kenya, because the challenge is opportunists took over the real liberators like Dedan Kimathi. Second liberation, it is those people who fought for the second liberation of this country and the return of and who helped us get the constitution. And some of them are here. Please wave, because we need to acknowledge you. Please wave. I've seen some people, second liberation, Kigoro there, unanyamaza tu. You know, thank you, comrade. Because we have to, many of us, especially the new Gen Z activists, we are forgetting the journey. When you get that space, remember this is a marathon. People have died, people have been there. What do we call them?
Social justice.
The social justice centers have been killed on the streets, have been walking in these streets. Kina Mama Rahma, please, let's wave also. Let's acknowledge these people. You know, and all the social justice activists, Olal, Viva comrades. These are the people who have brought us to this moment. So let's not look at it as it's 3 weeks. Oh, now we must always carry that journey. And when you're given to that opportunity, remember those people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So let's tweak the conversation a little bit, and let's talk about the journey when we look at police accountability and brutality. Of course, police have been there throughout the journey in terms of the first liberation, as Daktari talked about. But with the new Constitution 2010, there was different expectation in terms of how they would engage the protesters. So Otsiero, take us through how the journey has been and how do we make police accountable?
Thank you. My name, I'm called Otsieno Namwaya. I work with Human Rights Watch, but I will also speak more broadly because I've been an activist since the 90s. First of all, I think last week or early this week, I had somebody say in Parliament, I think it was Danson Mugatana, that this is the third liberation. The second liberation there was in the 90s, and then there was the independence struggle. And I think it is broadly true, but I have a different thinking, because the second liberation in reality aborted. Picking up from what Daktari has said here, it aborted because if you look at some of the discussions we're having here, they were the same discussions, partly the same discussions we were having in the 90s. The issue of the portrait of William Ruto. I remember sometime, I think 1997, we were the Gen Zs then, we were called Generation X. we had in this same spot, Cyprian, correct me, but we were wondering why do we have Moi's portrait everywhere? And that we need to stop that. That's part of imperialism. So having said that, that struggle, second liberation struggle picked up from independence struggle, which a lot of people believe that the independence struggle aborted and died with the death of Dedan Kimathi in 1957. If you look at movements such as FERA, which is February 18th Revolutionary Army, or stroke movement, which was with people like Akina, Brigadier Odongo, Raphael Wangondo, and the rest, the reasoning even for naming it FERA was that we aborted the struggle in 1957. We need to pick it from where we aborted it. That was 1957. That's why it's called February 18th Revolutionary Army. Dedan Kimathi was killed on February 18th, 1957. So it is part of the long struggle. So picking it up from there, I was supposed to talk about police accountability. I don't want to go into details of repeating some of the things that some of the speakers who are here in the morning had already spoken about. I want to basically flesh out some of the worrying